All right, let's jump right into one of the most powerful stories in the entire book of Genesis. We're catching up with a man named Jacob. Now, he's been away from home for 20, that's right, 20 long years. He's built a life, he has this huge family, but now it's time to go home. And standing between him and that home is the one person on earth he is absolutely terrified to see, his brother Esau. This whole story is about what happens when you're forced to face your deepest fears, and how that moment can completely reshape who you are. I want you to just picture this scene for a second. We're talking a massive, sprawling caravan. Hundreds of people, thousands of animals, all of them kicking up this huge cloud of dust that just hangs in the hot, heavy desert air. This is Jacob's entire world, everything he owns, on the move. But you can just feel this shadow hanging over the whole journey. Why? Well, the last time Jacob saw his brother Esau, he had tricked him and stolen his special blessing. So now, 2 decades later, this reunion is coming, and Jacob has no idea, absolutely no idea, if his brother is planning to greet him with a hug or with a sword. So as Jacob and his camp are moving along, something pretty incredible happens. He looks up and he sees a vision of God's angels. It's like a sign that he's not walking into this alone. He's so moved by this that he actually names the place Mahanaim, which literally means 2 camps. What's he saying? He's saying, there's my camp, and then there's God's camp right here with me. Okay, so feeling maybe a little more confident, Jacob decides to get out in front of this problem. See, Jacob is a planner, he's a strategist, so he sends some messengers racing ahead with a really carefully worded message for Esau. And he doesn't puff out his chest and say, hey, look how successful I am. No way. Instead, he calls himself Esau's servant. He's trying to show that he's coming in peace and really hoping to smooth things over before they even come face to face. You can just feel the tension ratcheting up, can't you? Jacob is waiting, probably pacing back and forth, just scanning the horizon. And then he sees them, his messengers, and they are riding hard. You can tell from their faces this is not good news. They're not carrying a peace treaty from Esau. Oh no, they're carrying a warning. The news they bring is like a punch to the gut. Esau is on his way to meet Jacob, and he's bringing 400 men with him. 400. I mean, come on, that is not a family welcome party. To Jacob, this sounds like an army. It sounds like a war party. And that old fear, the one he's been living with for 20 years, just comes rushing back, cold and sharp. Jacob's mind is just racing, going a mile a minute, and he immediately kicks into strategy mode. He divides everyone, and I mean everyone, his wives, his kids, all his flocks and herds, into 2 separate groups. The logic here is pretty desperate, but it's crystal clear. If Esau comes and attacks one camp, then maybe, just maybe, the other one will have a chance to escape into the wilderness. So after Jacob has done absolutely everything humanly possible to protect his family, he has this moment where he realizes his plans, his strategies, they might not be enough. He's done all he can do, and so he turns to the only place he has left to go. He turns to God. And what's so powerful about his prayer is just how humble it is. This is not Jacob making demands. He starts by basically saying, I don't deserve any of this. He knows that all the good things in his life, his family, his wealth, have come from God's kindness. And right now, in the face of this huge danger, he just feels small and unworthy. And then he gets completely, totally honest. He doesn't try to hide how scared he is. He says it right out loud, for I fear him. He lays his deepest, darkest feeling right there before God and just begs for help. It's this incredible moment of being completely vulnerable, but also showing complete trust. Now, even after that incredibly powerful prayer, you have to remember, Jacob is still a man of action, so his mind gets to work on one last plan. A massive strategic gift, one that's designed hopefully to cool his brother's anger. And this just shows you the incredible scale of his plan. He sends out wave after wave after wave of animals. First, a huge group of 220 goats and sheep. Then he leaves a big space. Then comes a group of 30 mother camels with their babies. Another big space. Then 50 cattle. Another space. And finally, 30 donkeys. And each little group is led by a servant who has the exact same instructions. When Esau meets you and asks whose you are, you tell him, these are a gift for my master Esau, from your servant Jacob. So the sun goes down, the gifts are on their way, the night is pitch black and probably a little cold. Jacob takes his family, his wives, his 11 sons, and he has them cross this rushing river called the Jabbok. You can just imagine how scary that must have been, wading through that dark, noisy water. And once they're all safely on the other side, Jacob sends them ahead. He stays behind, completely and utterly alone. So the camp is silent now. The only thing you can hear is the sound of the rushing river and the desert wind. Jacob is all by himself, left alone with his thoughts and his fears. And then, out of the shadows, a man appears. There's no introduction, no warning. He just attacks. And for the rest of that night, they're locked in this desperate, silent struggle. For hours and hours, the fight goes on, under the stars, in the dust, right by the riverbank. It is a grueling hand-to-hand battle. Think about it. Jacob, the guy who's always thinking, always planning, he's forced into this raw physical fight for his very life. And what's so amazing is that neither of them can get the upper hand. They are perfectly matched, wrestling all night long, right until the first light of dawn starts to break on the horizon. Just as the sky is starting to turn gray, the mysterious man knows he needs to leave. And so he reaches out and just touches the socket of Jacob's hip. And with that single touch, it's dislocated. Jacob is now in searing pain. He's crippled. But here's the amazing part. Even now, when he's hurt and beyond exhausted, he does not let go. He clings to the man, and through his pain, he gasps out, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." Right here, this is the moment the entire story turns. The wrestling just stops. The stranger looks at Jacob, who's still clinging to him in the dim morning light, and he asks this really simple question. What is your name? But he's not just asking for a name, you know? He's asking Jacob who he really is. And Jacob answers. He says, "My name is Jacob," which means the deceiver or the heel grabber. It's the name that has defined his whole life of scheming and running away. And by saying it out loud, right here, right now, he's finally facing his past. But the man gives him a new name, a new destiny. He says, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel." Israel. This new name means one who struggles with God. This is so much more than a nickname. It's a total rebranding of who he is and who the nation that comes from him will be. His new name, Israel, tells us that being part of the story means you have to be willing to struggle, to wrestle with life, with people, and even with God himself, and to find your blessing right there in the middle of that struggle. And in that moment, it all clicks for Jacob. He finally understands who he's been fighting with all night. He names that very spot Peniel, which means the face of God in Hebrew. He says it himself. "I have seen God face to face, and I'm still alive." That wrestling match wasn't just some random fight. It was a spiritual battle for his very soul. So as the sun finally breaks over the mountains, the struggle is over. And Jacob, who is now named Israel, limps away from the river. He's been blessed. He's been changed forever. But he will walk with a limp for the rest of his life. And that limp is so important. It's a permanent physical reminder of what happened that night. It shows everyone, and it reminds him every single day that his new strength, his new identity as Israel, didn't come because he was so strong and unbeatable. No, it came at the very moment he was hurt, broken, and had no choice but to cling to God for a blessing. His greatest weakness became his greatest strength. So, what can this incredible, ancient story teach us about our own lives? Well, Jacob's journey shows us something really profound about improving our own character, what we can call our inner dimensions. Real growth, true change, it doesn't happen when we run away from our problems. It happens when we finally stop running, turn around, and choose to wrestle with them. The specific character trait that Jacob really shows us here is courage. In Hebrew, a character trait like this is called a midah. And Jacob's courage isn't about not being afraid. Remember, he was terrified. Real courage is feeling that fear, feeling it completely, and choosing to face the problem anyway, whether that problem is a brother with an army or a mysterious stranger in the middle of the night. So here is our mid-out challenge for this week, for all of us. First, I want you to identify one thing, just one, that you've been avoiding because it feels scary or difficult. It might be a tough conversation you need to have, or a big project at school, or even just trying something new. Second, instead of running from it, just think of one small, brave step you can take to face it. You don't have to solve the whole thing at once, just one tiny step. And third, tell a parent or a trusted friend what your plan is, because just like Jacob needed God, we all need other people to help us find our courage. Thank you for joining us for this complete journey through the Pardes. We hope these ancient truths help you and your family improve your own dimensions this week. If you enjoyed this full chapter deep dive, please like, subscribe, and share which part of the journey touched your soul in the comments. We'll see you in the next chapter.